a conjecture in my mind made up of a series of photos that I saw in Deborah Willis's book about the black female body, made up of thoughts about Sarah Bartman on display for all those years, made up of the spectacle of the enslaved African on the auction block and how their body was perceived and how their bodies were sold, and how always a woman's body has two purposes. Her body is commodified in different kinds of ways than her male counterpart, because always she could serve two purposes, one of a sexual being and one as a laborer. So the pictures that are in Deborah Willis's book about the slave woman Delilah portrays this incredibly beautiful woman who is beautiful by universal standards. I'm pretty sure that any human being seeing that person would go, oh my. Men would covet her, women would want to be her, little children would want to sit at her lap, old men would want to hold her hand. She was that kind of pretty. And it's clear from the photographs that she was extremely well taken care of. She lived in a sumptuous kind of way. She sat on cushions made of velvet. She wore silk upon her head. She had gold in her ears and around her wrist. And then there's a second set of photos of Delilah taken that same day, probably that afternoon, of where her clothes are roughly pulled from her body, bearing her breast. And my takeaway from that is that whoever owned her let her know in that movement that she was owned, that yes, you can have all this, I will give all of this to you, but understand that you are mine. But the best trick was Delilah's, because if you really look at any of the photos of her, her eyes are absolutely vacant. They are distant. They have left the room. So she played the last trick. She said, yes, this flesh and bone you can have, but the meat you can't ever touch. I imagine that she's somewhere in there, in that body, and she hears the voice of her mother. She hears the voice of her children who were taken away from her at birth. She hears the sound of the water lapping on the boat. That's what I hear from Delilah. This piece is also an homage to many black women who suffered at an auction block. I already talked about Sarah Bartman, but I'm also talking about Sally Hemings, who we know was the 4-decade mistress of one of the founding fathers of this country, of Thomas Jefferson. He had a pathway from his quarters to hers, so he could go in secret to her whenever he cared to, that he could command her to be with him whenever he wanted to. And notice that it's he and he, it's never she. And also on the side of Delilah's room, if you walk around, there are peepholes. Because I don't know if this is true historically, but it's been written in several of the fictionalized history books about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, that he had peepholes in her bedroom so that he could sit in that darkened pathway and view his prized possession. In the conjecture of Delilah, this composite woman I've made, on her sign it says, against all odds, she reads in 2 languages. So in her space, she has a universal reader, and she also has a small German boy's book. And I can only imagine that all of us, every woman on the planet, at some point makes a deal with the person that they're with. Sometimes they're little deals, sometimes they're great big deals. I can only imagine that this woman, enslaved woman, said to this man at some time, do you want to smile for me today as well? Then today, I want you to teach me to read. Do you want an embrace from me when I see you? Then today, I want a new book. And often I talk to young people who don't understand that black people, whenever they could, learned how to read. It It's a misnomer that black people did not read in this country until modern times, until after civil rights, but that's a lie. That's a blatant lie. It was illegal in most states, in all of the slaveholding states, to be able to teach a slave to read. That was an illegality. However, we know illegalities happen each and every day in every corner of this world. People do illegal things, and slaves, every chance they got, learned how to read from a passing evangelist, from someone who came to the plantation for a short time, who taught one person the alphabet, and that person taught the next person by moonlight behind the barn so they wouldn't be caught. And reading was taught. Pages of books were found under people's mattresses where they might have had one page from a Bible that they passed on and on and on. So maybe they only read one page of Ephesians all of their life. But that one page they read and they knew. So black people read. Black people always read. It was important. It was a ticket to something better than what they had as enslaved people.
Excuse me.